Okay, here we are. It's Alexander Lawrence, the Portable Infinite, New Noise, everything, and we're with Michael E. Lee. That's how you pronounce it, people. From Red Wedding, the last surviving member of Red Wedding. Red Wedding was like a band. I saw them at the Anti-Club, the Lhasa, and the On Club when it was on. I don't think it was on Sunset. It was over, like maybe on the other over there, kind of north, somewhere like Hollywood and Vine, closer to there. Where I'm not sure it was Highland. I think it was that other street or where it was at. But
it was somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere there. It wasn't when it was still more like a ska club. It was over on Sunset, over kind of like in Silver Lake. He lived in Silver Lake and Echo Park back in that time. The LA when the LA punk scene kind of like morphed. It went kind of hardcore. It kind of moved, like a lot of things took place during that time. Many bands had broken up. The Germs, Darby Crash died at the end of '80. By '82, a lot of bands had broken up. Some of them had not succeeded at getting signed. Some of them were trying to break into the national scene. The X sort of tried to become more mainstream, but I don't know if that worked. I mean, they had a couple hits. The Go-Go's, the least likely of all the bands that played during that time, the Go-Go's became really successful. And punk rock, like things were happening then. Like punk rock kind of went hardcore, and a lot of us didn't follow the hardcore movement. It's like and other thing. I mean, everything. It was like ska. The scene that was once like ska, techno, new wave, disco, metal, cabaret music, everything, or just rockabilly. It was all one thing. All of a sudden, it became really divided, and and then even people like Henry Rollins and Nick Cave and Lydia Lunch were doing poetry readings at Club Lhasa, and MTV happened. I mean, the interesting thing for people that were still kind of interested in the counterculture, there was the Peter Ivers New Wave Theater, and a lot of the bands that I liked at the time, like Suburban Lawns and Red Wedding and Mnemonic Devices and the Surf Punks, and even older bands like Dead Kennedys, Fear, and Circle Jerks were on New Wave Theater. It came in video form. It was on Night Flight, I think.
Yeah, eventually, yeah.
So that was kind of like our MTV for like our hardcore underground. So Red Wedding, definitely stood out. They existed for 5 years, 81 to 85. They released a few EPs and played in all my favorite venues, like what was kind of like the early goth scene, really. I mean, what we call that, or early post-punk scene. I mean, and Spider was also in the Hey Taxi band.
Yeah, we both were, yeah.
Oh, yeah, and let's see. Okay, so I mentioned all that. Okay, they didn't really tour heavily. They played San Francisco and San Diego. They went to England after the band broke up, and even though they seemed kind of like a European influenced band. Okay, so let's see where we're. Okay, so let's talk about what was the so since I talked to you last time, I've talked to D. Madden, I talked to the guy from Suburban Lawns, and a lot of bands, and so I kind of get a better picture. I'm really fascinated. I mean, somebody should come around and do a documentary or a book about New Wave Theater in the early LA post-punk, because I guess Gun Club was kind of in there too. And what were you? Were you just, what were bands trying to do? Just release a single and hopefully Rodney Bingenheimer would play it on K-Rock, or what was you guys don't seem like you were trying to get signed by Capitol or anything. What were you trying to do in the early days?
We were just trying to have fun and be creative. We weren't very driven in the sense of like trying to find a label or I don't know. We thought if it would happen, it would happen, but
you were more like a party band or something. It was like a party. It was like Did you go out to art school, or were you like an art school band? Did
Oh
you?
no, 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 no. I got kicked out of high school. No, I don't know what we were really. We just we just Spider and I, we were a couple for, well, in the end, when he passed away in 2015, we've been together for 42 years. So by the time Red Wedding came along, we had been together for a long time. He was in all kinds of bands before I even got into music. So
You
I got into music because Spider abandoned his kind of overblown shredder type rock bands and joined a little punk band called the Tracers. And I used to go with them to rehearsals and I would dance. And then the singer liked the way I moved and asked me if I wanted to join as a backup singer. And I was like, oh, okay.
so there was the Tracers first, and then Hey Taxi, and then Red Wedding.
Yeah, we were only in the Tracers, I think, less than a year, and then Spider and I split off and started Hey Taxi, and that was our band with Jim Kaiser on bass and George Hurley on drums.
Right. Yeah. It was. Yeah. I was in the what's that band called again? The Minutemen documentary. The
Mhm.
we Jamaica or whatever it's called. They mentioned Hey Taxi in that movie. Like
Yeah, I've never seen it, but I heard somebody rolls their eyes or something. It's okay.
but so you were kind of dragged in the band, like you were. It's like, I mean, it's kind of like, this man's down. Next person up. Okay, who? They look around. Okay, they're going. Here's Michael. He's got. You had a cool look. You. I mean, obviously, it was like, okay, well, you're really tall. That's good in the front, man. You're like the tallest guy.
True.
You're the tallest guy in the band all the time. So it's like, okay, that's our guy there. There we go. It wasn't like they didn't have a tryout.
Yeah, it's funny because Spider and we're both tall, and then John and Mark were on the short side,
Oh,
so it
yeah.
wasn't always easy posing for band pictures.
So yeah, I mean, okay, so you were going, you found all these guys. How did you find Marco and John?
Okay, so the true story is Spider managed a, a sex club in Hollywood, and Mark and John both worked there. So Red Wedding was basically born out of a glory hole club.
Okay, so that was like an early '70s, somewhere kind of like, because they still had them a few years ago, like Santa Monica and Fairfax, around that area. They would have like after night kind of clubs and stuff.
Right, right. Yeah, this one was on near Melrose and Fairfax.
Yeah, same area. So like yeah, about 3 blocks from where I was. But like it would be like an after hours that people would go, like, and it would have no sign. It would just be like all black and.
Sure. Yeah, it was it was kind of like a little underground gay sex club.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Well, we needed those places back then, right?
Some of us, I don't. Yeah.
Well, okay. So you were. I mean, when I talked to you before, you were your favorite place was the Brave Dog, and can you describe the Brave Dog? It was in downtown. It was kind of like on the Vermont kind of side of.
On First Street, in I think what they called, like, it was like the Japanese area of downtown.
Oh, right. Yeah. I was just there a couple days ago, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's torn down and it's like a subway stop or something now. I don't know.
Yeah.
But so Spider and I were in Hey Taxi, and we had met Jack Marquette and Claire Glidden, and had become friends, and they were always coming to the Hey Taxi shows, and they decided they wanted to open up a little club of their own. And so I still remember after a Hey Taxi show, they said, oh, we want to show you this the space that we found, and it was turned out, eventually became the Brave Dog Club. But it needed a lot of work, and in fact, we helped build the stage, and Spider got the speaker system from the band The Brat, and it was, it was just a very, very small club. They filmed the movie there, and in filming the movie there, the movie company fixed the club up a little bit more, kind of spruced it up for the film, so that, and it was just, you pay $5, and they have big uh, I can't even think of the name of things of beer.
Yeah.
The barrels.
Yeah.
Yeah. And all kinds of bands played there.
Yeah.
And they also had, in the beginning, they had like film nights, and it was just they couldn't get a license, so it was totally underground. It was just by word of mouth. And so Hey Taxi played opening night at Brave Dog. I think there was probably like 20 people there. And then we became Red Wedding, and then we sort of became like, Jack always called us the Brave Dog house band, because we just, we played a lot, and we would step in when people canceled and they needed a band. And those are my favorite days. It was a wonderful, wonderful, fun time.
So there's let's see, where are we here? Okay, so yeah, I mean, like, there's a lot of, when you look up Red Wedding, there's a lot of movie stuff and like stuff that's not like, has nothing to do with the band at all.
We were way before Game of Thrones and all that.
Yeah, there's a whole Game of Thrones. It's like, it's like, okay, well, if you want to like see more about Red Wedding, there's a website called Michael and Spider. That's a good,
yeah,
pretty much tells you a lot. And then there's another one, Theoretical, that's pretty good.
Yeah, the theoretical parties were started off with Jim Van Tyne, who was a DJ at the One Bar, which was right around the corner from where Spider and I lived in Silver Lake at the time. And he wanted to do like these Sunday afternoon get-togethers where bands played, and his idea was to kind of bring straight and gay people together to enjoy music together. And Red Wedding played the first one, and we played another one, I think, a year later. But they went on for years, those theoretical parties, and they got bigger and bigger. And the first one was held in the One Hoover, and the stage they built was literally built out of beer cases with plywood on top. So I remember standing up there moving around, and it was you kind of wondered if at any minute the stage was gonna, kind of fall apart under our feet. But it was fun.
Well, there were some bands that you played with: Outer Circle, Crown of Thorns, Community FK. You played with X. What were some of the other bands that you liked that you played with?
Well, we played with so many bands. I mean, we played with local bands, many that you just named, Outer Circle, but we also played with Killing Joke, 45 Grave, Specimen, Bow Wow Wow, Romeo Void, Suburban Lawns, the Sparks. We play with a lot of bands.
So
I'm sorry, my favorite local band was Wild Kingdom.
Oh yeah, Wild Kingdom. Yeah, I remember that. I think I might have seen them once or so. I remember they were definitely a band that played at the Anti Club a lot. So yeah, I mean, when I talk of this period, a lot of my friends, I mean, they lived like west of Vermont, they lived in the closer to like what they call East Hollywood now. And then I remember in the 90s, people started venturing to Silver Lake, and then Echo Park. Now they're way the hell up in, Highland Park and Eagle Rock now, because that's where the cheap rents are. But you were living in Silver Lake like in those days. I mean,
way before that.
where
It was a Silver Lake was pretty rough back when we
I
lived
think the first time
there.
I even went to Silver Lake or Eagle Echo Park was in '88, maybe. So you were there 10 years before. So what was it like?
Yeah, I think it was just it was kind of a rough area. It was heavily Hispanic in those days, and yeah, we lived there for I think like 5 years, and we really loved it.
So
You
it
know,
was around Sunset Junction there area or
yeah, yeah, yeah.
okay, so you met Spider in '71 and you lived in
Uh-huh.
Huntington Beach back then. What was that like?
Huntington Beach or Spider or
Well,
maybe
both, everything.
I met Spider in a little gay bar in Sunset Beach called the Stable, and yeah, and we talked. We danced to a song. It was just a tiny, tiny, tiny little club. I mean, tiny, but it was right on Pacific Coast Highway. And then I remember that we walked outside, and he gave me his phone number, which he wrote on a little piece of pink paper, which I still have. And he said, call me sometime. And then he gave me a kiss, and then he stuck out his thumb, and he just disappeared into the fog. And I knew right then, Alexander, that I had met my soulmate. I was 18 years old, and I knew it right then and there. So yeah, that was in '71, and we were together until he passed away in 2015.
But where did the Huntington Beach? Oh, Sunset Beach is sort of
Oh,
part.
I'm sorry. He lived in Huntington Beach, and I lived in Long Beach. We both had fake IDs, and so we would both hitchhike to that little bar, which was, I mean, there wasn't really a place for young gay people to go except to try and sneak into a bar in those days. There just wasn't any. It was a different time.
Yeah.
Being Spider and I got together just a couple of years after Stonewall, so we were part of the first wave of young gay people coming out as openly, as couples.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I
But
mean,
it wasn't easy always. It
I
was,
mean,
you got a lot of flack.
I think in the '70s and '80s there was like, yeah, there was more like gay bars, and then like now, like every bar is a gay bar, right?
Well, I kind of like that here in Tucson. Most of the gay, there's a couple that are still left, and most of them have, disappeared because people now, especially the younger generations, you just go out to a bar to be with your friends and to be with people. There isn't a need to, try and go to a place where we would feel safe or protected. So, and I like that because that's what I always wanted. I always, being gay is just like it doesn't like totally dictate who I am. I'm like, and so I just like when people of all stripes get together and hang out and learn about each other and have fun together. So,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I went to Long Beach State, and they had a real, I mean, gay scene and like on Broadway there.
oh yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
and then
very small, but yeah,
and then
section.
and then I lived in San Francisco, and of course, it was like kind of like part of San Francisco back then was like it was like a gay kind of enclave. And when I lived in New York, I mean, part of the time I was in Chelsea, and that's pretty real close to that thing. So it just, and then I worked in publishing, and then half the people are gay, in publishing. Like, hate to break it to you folks, it's like, because like the people, it's like the people that read books and you know like know something about art or ballet or fashion. They used to be all like gay people, right? You're not offended, that say these things.
Well, gay people often tend to be very creative people. So yeah, so you might hate gay people, but your wife is a gay man's doing your wife's hair, and the color of your car was probably uh, probably came up with that color, and people don't, we're everywhere. So
Yeah, it's like yeah. I mean, all these books over here and records. I mean, it's mostly half of it, or a big portion is like the gay and lesbian uh people, and they just that's matter of fact, they're here to stay. Okay, so I when I talked to Don Bowles of the Germs, I mean the Germs were a band that rarely played outside of LA. I mean, how, so the Red Wedding, I mean, there was no plans to do a tour or anything. I mean, you came to San Francisco once.
that was a lot. I think it's I'm friends with several local bands here in Tucson. It's much easier to put together little tours and stuff, and to go out and to visit other places than it was back then. It just wasn't set up that way. So, and we were in Los Angeles, and that's one of the music capitals, and so I mean, people did. People often said that Red Wedding, people would tell us, you need to go to New York. You need to go to New York. The people in LA can't really appreciate you. You're more the people in New York. Or we also heard, like, you need to go to Europe. You need to go to Europe. The people in Europe would appreciate you more than people in LA. I don't know if that's true, but we heard that all the time. And we thought about moving to New York, and then I don't know.
Yeah,
We were happy to just stay in LA, and we played in San Diego a lot.
it, it seemed to work for people like the Gun Club, when he went to New York and he was on the cover of a New York Rocker, and then all of a sudden he was like somebody all of a sudden, and people in LA thought, oh, who that guy? But
we played Young Club and Axe and all those bands.
But yeah, tell me the story. You played a early show with Perry Farrell back in the '80s. Can you tell me about that show when he was in SciComm?
Yeah, we played with SciComm a few times, and I we we weren't friends, but I mean, we knew of each other. We were hanging out in the same clubs and playing in local bands. I really, really liked SciComm. And I remember the last time we played with them, it was a show with Community FK and SciComm. I can't even remember where it was. But I remember I was looking at Perry. He was sitting across the room, and there were two young women talking to him. And this is going to sound really hippie, but for the first and only time, I saw an aura around his head. And I mean, honestly, I wasn't that messed up. So, and I remember turning to someone and saying, like, that guy's he's gonna be big. So, and he was,
You predicted it. You're like an early adopter.
Wow. just to my friend that was sitting there. But I just always remember that. I could see all these like blues and purples and stuff around his head. I don't know what I was actually seeing, but I can't even say I ever really even like talked to him. I was really, 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 really withdrawn and shy.
Yeah, I can.
So
Yeah, I never talked to you back then. Like I mean,
I would, Alexander, I would hide after shows behind couches and stuff, or go sit in the car after shows so people wouldn't talk to me.
yeah.
It's it's weird, but I've always had this thing where it's like, pay attention to me, notice me, pay attention to me. And then when people do, it's like, don't notice me, don't pay attention to me. It's this weird yin and yang thing. I don't like when people fuss over me. It just makes me uncomfortable.
So
But I'm still going to be noticed, so go figure.
So like okay, so eventually, I mean, it wasn't like you didn't have any success. I mean, you were discovered by Bemis Bain Records. They had Mnemonic Devices, Outer Circle, some of the other bands in this scene that we were talking about. What was what was your understanding of that label at that time? Was it just a mom and pop operation, or did they have you folding records or anything like that? What was Bemis Bain?
They did have us down. I remember one day packaging records, putting them in mailers. They were very nice. I can't even, it was two guys and I can't really remember their name. they were very nice, and they were really enthusiastic about Red Wedding. And we had Tom Wilson produced it. I mean, we recorded it literally in the middle of the night because it was cheap to rent, a studio. And I think Tom had just finished recording Christian Death's first album when he came to us. So, and I was just I just remember being very, very nervous, recording that first album. So I don't really remember too much else about it.
Okay, so let's see. Okay, so you played up in Berkeley and the Sound of Music in the Bay Area. Do you remember those shows going up there? Like, well,
But yeah, in Berkeley, it was almost like we were playing in, I don't remember the name of the place, but it was almost like we were playing in someone's living room. And there was a nice sized group of people there, and they were very, very supportive and enthusiastic and seemed to really enjoy it. And then Sound of Music, I just remember, I mean, to be honest, it was just kind of a dump. It was just, there wasn't much to it. It reminded me of like the early punk clubs, you just, and at one point we were playing and the guy who was doing our sound was nodded out.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, the Sound of Music I went there with China White in '81, and it was basically a bar in the Tenderloin.
Right.
And we all walked right through the back door and just grabbed bottles of, vodka. Nobody. I was like 17 back then. It was like, it was crazy. But so I mean, I remember I saw you at the Lhasa one time. Marco wasn't in the band. He was sitting in the audience watching you guys. And remember that maybe about 85 when Marco wasn't in the band? Do you remember that time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Marco was my best friend before we were ever in a band together. And he played keyboards, and we were really, really close. And even after he left the band, we remained very, very close, best friends until he passed away in early 92 from complications from AIDS. And that whole time. It's weird because when Red Wedding first started out, we were like, hey, we're just this, fun gay band, and rock and roll was wonderful. But halfway through the time we were together is when AIDS raised its ugly head, and before you knew it, we knew a lot of people that were dying. So I think when we recorded our second EP, that was colored a lot by what was going on, because we were dealing with an awful lot of people getting sick and people even dying at that point. And it wasn't fun being a gay band anymore,
Is that part of the reason why the band broke up in '85? It was just kind of the AIDS started to come in, affecting, or there was too much partying, or what happened there?
I think probably I'm the one that broke up the band. Alexander, I was just exhausted. We had gone from the Tracers to Hey Taxi to Red Wedding. I mean, we were a band. In all those bands, we rehearsed like 5 nights a week. And I think the burning the candle at both ends, by then I was just exhausted. I just couldn't do it anymore. And I kind of felt like I had already done everything that I wanted to do, or as far as expressing myself creatively. So Spider and I broke up the band. We moved to Long Beach, and we lived there for many years, and then eventually moved here to Arizona. But I think it was like a 17-year gap before we returned to music in a different form. But
when did the Elegant Rabies start? When did you do that band?
I started that band after after Spider passed away, I was majorly screwed up. I was so depressed and so lost. And I mean, we grew up together, and all of a sudden I was this man in my early 60s who had been in a relationship since I was 18, and all of a sudden I'm single and lost. And I just happened through friends to meet some young musicians here in Tucson, and someone said, "Why don't you start a band?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, I'm in my 60s." And there's like, "No, but you should." So I did. I got some young musicians from here in town, and met other musicians and other, the local scene, the local bands and stuff. And so I started a band that was called the Elegant Rabies. And we were kind of, I don't even really know how to describe the music, a little bit psychedelic and a little bit glam. And what I would call like crash rock.
Are you still doing it, or you?
No, I broke up that band in 2018, I think.
Oh, okay.
So we were together, I think 3 years. We did come out to LA and play one show. So.
But you're still up on Bandcamp and stuff. What are you doing now? Are you still going to do music, or?
I'm toying with the idea of going back in, and I know a lot of musicians in bands here on the local scene, some really good bands, and I think I might record one more. I recorded a record with the Elegant Rabies, and I think I might record just one more, kind of like my swan song.
Okay.
And I kind of want to do covers, just all the songs that influenced me from when I was a little kid. The first song I remember being obsessed with was Downtown by Petula Clark, and Stop in the Name of Love by the Supremes, all that when I was a little kid. And so, I don't know, kind of like, so, and I would have just ask different musicians from the different bands I know to sit in and work with me. I also want to do Sunset People, that Donna Summer song.
So if people want to follow that, you'll have updates on this Michael.
Yeah, if you go, I think probably michaelandspider.com it's all there. Our whole history, videos, music, interviews, reviews, and it kind of keeps you going.
Okay, so we'll definitely have a link in the description here for Michael and Spider. Theoretical is another good place. The Elegant Rabies band camp is good. Well, I mean, we could go on. Maybe we'll do a part 2 after when you release some of these songs and stuff, like in the next year.
That'd be cool.
And stuff. And well, thanks for talking to me. I mean, Red Wedding is definitely, I mean, a band you should check out. I mean, they're like one of the early bands that kind of combined rock and theatrics and the sound of the Juno 6 and stuff.
We had so many influences. Yeah. From
early. I mean, it's definitely part of that early synth period and stuff when they were really very new and affordable. And
right. And Spider was, an incredible guitar player. I don't know if in the 70s, Eddie Van Halen, Spider was his favorite guitar player. Back when Spider was like, playing like, like hard rock.
Yeah, Spider was a shred guitar player. And,
it's more like a Hendrix or that type of caliber guitar player.
Yeah, and so hats off to Spider and his guitar abilities and trying to get all those, I don't know how many notes you can get per second, but it was like pretty fast. I mean, I can't play that fast, was it crazy like hanging out with them and him doing scales and stuff all the time?
He played his guitar constantly, of course. And sometimes it would be too much. And I would tell him, you love your guitar more than me.
Well, Well, it's 2023, you know, this is our tribute to Spider and, you know, and Red Wedding and all the great music that they brought to us over the years. And, you know, thanks for talking to me. Well, let me, hey, thanks
It's
everybody.
my
You know,
pleasure.
there'll be a part 2 soon. Okay.
Part two.
Oh, wait a minute. Let's see.